Hello and welcome to today's video. Today, I want to share with you 6 FODMAP tips and tricks. So just for context, I did a low FODMAP diet for over 5 years. In fact, I was actually so restricted. I was basically surviving on 5 or 6 foods for those 5 years. And now, whilst I'm not completely FODMAP tolerant, I have made so much progress. There are more FODMAPs than I can tolerate than I can't. And I am 100% confident that I've cracked the code and it's just a matter of time before I'm fully recovered. So I want to share from my experience, from my journey, a couple of tips and tricks that I wish someone would have just given me at the beginning because they improved my quality of life. They made healing fast. They overall were just really good tips. So first of all, I've got a couple with regards to flavor and taste and making it so that your food still tastes really good. Because when we're cutting big food groups out, it can often affect the flavor of our food quite a lot. And two of the biggest, and these are probably the biggest FODMAP sensitivities that people have, are onions and garlic. But what if I were to tell you that there's a way that we can get these flavors without having any FODMAP content? So the first is using garlic oil. So the thing that's really cool about this is we get that flavor of garlic, but we don't get any FODMAP. And this is because FODMAPs are water-soluble compounds, which means they dissolve in water. And when we make garlic oil, we're basically putting garlic in oil, or you can buy this at the supermarket and it's already been prepared. Basically, all of these flavorful compounds that are in garlic will soak into the oil, but the FODMAP compounds don't. They stay in the garlic itself. So this way we get this really nice taste of garlic, and you can use this garlic oil as a replacement in any of your meals for garlic as an ingredient. So if you want to make something like a spaghetti bolognese and you can't have the onions and garlic, well, I've got a trick for the onions coming up, but for the garlic, we could just put a bit of this garlic oil in and then you get that garlic flavor, and it's amazing. Because honestly, if I were to rate flavors, garlic has to be one of the top flavors. It is the base of so many dishes because it is just so delicious. And this is probably one of the things about doing a low FODMAP diet that is really kind of annoying, is you use a lot of these really tasty foods. So this gives you an option to get this flavor back in your diet without any FODMAPs at all. Next, we're going to try and get this onion flavor, because onion also is amazing. Onions and garlic are just the MVPs of food deliciousness. So when it comes to onions, I actually have a really nice trick. So what we do is we buy spring onions. These are really easy to buy in England. They're a bit harder in other places. Like here in Portugal is a bit less common. And I've noticed like in Germany, they're quite common. But in Asia, sometimes they're common in certain countries, sometimes they're not. Basically what we're looking for is spring onions. These are like the onions that have the big green part. And that's actually the bit that we want to eat. The green part of a spring onion has no FODMAPs. So as long as we just eat that green bit, you don't get any FODMAP content. It is really important to note that the white bit is still high in FODMAPs. And if you start, so imagine you have the plant like this, and the green bit is up here. The closer you get to the bottom, the higher the FODMAP content is going to get. So even if you're still in the green bit, but you start getting to that big stem, what you'll notice as you're cutting it up, you'll notice that inside the stem, there's a little bit of white, and this is higher in FODMAPs. So if you're really, really super sensitive, just use the green leafy bit on the top. If you have some level of tolerance, you might be okay with handling a little bit of that stem where there's a little bit of white, because it's still lower FODMAP, but is a little bit more. It's not no FODMAP. But this is really nice, and it adds a really nice onion flavor. The only thing is that the flavor in this is a little bit more sensitive to heat. So instead of using like onions at the base in the beginning of making the meal, you kind of want to almost like season it like you're seasoning with herbs, like fresh herbs, towards the end of the meal instead. This way you're still going to get the same kind of like oniony kick, but you also get no FODMAPs, and you can literally just use this anywhere that you would want to use onions to get that oniony flavor. And if I'd have known this in the beginning of my journey, it would have been just so helpful, because being able to have onions and garlic and these flavors, also there's a lot of health benefits to these things as well. They're very immune stimulating, immune boosting, they're very healthful foods. So overall, these are two of my absolute favorite flavor hacks. So that's why I wanted to give them to you first, because if I can make your life a little bit more enjoyable, then that's really, really nice. The third tip or trick that I have is that size matters. And what we're talking about here is portion sizes, not something else that you might have been thinking. So when it comes to size, everyone has a different level of tolerance. The amount that you're going to be able to handle is going to depend on a lot of different factors. But the overall point is that you're really going to have to listen to your body and go by what you become aware you're able to tolerate. And this can change over time as well. So I work with a lot of different people who have lots of complex, different digestive problems, different types of food sensitivities, not just FODMAP, like histamine or sulfites or salicylates, lots of different things. And one thing that I've really come to see is that there is no objective level of sensitivity. It's always a spectrum. Everyone always has a certain level of tolerance to something. And the same is really true with FODMAPs. There is going to be a level or a quantity or an amount of a certain food that you'll be able to tolerate without symptoms. And it's only when you go past that level that you will then start to get symptoms. And you might be thinking, that's not true. I get symptoms all the time. Well, that just means that your sensitivity is very, very small. For example, let's talk about Brussels sprouts, because these are a bit of a controversial food because some people really like them. Some people don't like them at all, but they are quite high in FODMAPs. And eating less than one full Brussels sprout feels kind of silly. Why would you go about your day like making a meal and you're going to cook up a Brussels, even just one Brussels sprout feels kind of silly, but then to only cook one Brussels sprout and then only eat half of it or a quarter of it, it just feels absolutely ridiculous. But this is the thing. Sometimes we can get this belief that we don't actually tolerate something at all, when really we do tolerate it to some extent, and the portion size is really, really important. Now, the reason that I'm giving you this is not just that I'm trying to increase the amount of different types of foods that you're going to be able to eat, which is really important for the enjoyment of your life and being able to eat nice food, but also because increasing dietary diversity is actually one of the solutions to this problem, because FODMAP sensitivity is actually something that you can completely reverse and overcome. But the thing that's really tricky is the way that we resolve this is we improve the health of your microbiome, we increase the diversity, and we improve the function of the digestive system so you become tolerant to these things again. One of the most important ways that we can do that is by increasing food diversity. So if you cut all FODMAPs out, just anything that has any FODMAP content, you just completely remove it. That's actually really damaging to the microbiome. And I'm not saying don't do it, because sometimes it's necessary. We do need to get your symptoms under control. Being bloated and gassy and triggering autoimmunity and all of these other problems is not good. But it's really important that we see that this is actually a spectrum, and you're going to have higher levels of tolerance for certain foods. And of those foods that you are able to tolerate, your dosage of how much of that you are going to be able to tolerate is also variable. It's going to change. So it's really important that we do respect your limits and we don't push you into a symptomatic presentation by eating too much of a certain food. But within whatever you're able to tolerate, you should try to eat as much of a diverse array of different foods as possible, because this really helps microbiome diversity, which is actually a really important part of solving this problem for the long term. So just be really mindful of the portion sizes of these FODMAP containing substances, vegetables, and be cautious with it, but don't completely eliminate things unnecessarily. And this brings us really nicely onto our next point, which is to mix and match. And the point here is that FODMAPs can be cumulative. So we can get a certain amount of FODMAP content from, let's say, from the Brussels sprouts, and you might be able to do half a Brussels sprout when you're okay. You also might be able to handle half a cup of boiled cabbage in a soup or something, and that's also fine. If you combine these two things together, now the total amount of FODMAP content exceeds what you're able to handle. So it's really important that you understand a little bit more about FODMAPs, what the compounds are in foods that cause you to have these types of sensitivities or symptoms, because as we learn more about what our food is made of and what the building blocks of these different foods that we eat are, we can become more mindful of how this is going to contribute to the total FODMAP load of an individual given meal. This way we can stay within our zone of tolerance, where we're in a place where we have very low levels of symptoms, but we're still keeping as diverse array of dietary intake as possible. So another really kind of important side note on this is that FODMAPs are actually a very broad array of foods. FODMAPs, if you're not familiar, is an acronym. If you don't know what this acronym is, it's short for fermentable fructans, oligosaccharides, monosaccharides, disaccharides, and polyols. So this is like a very broad group of like a bunch of different things. And very often what I hear is someone goes to, let's say, like a nutritionist, and they say, okay, you need to do the low FODMAP diet. And then that person just cuts all the FODMAPs out. What you actually want to do is try to start adding certain groups of FODMAPs back in. For example, one of these in this FODMAP acronym is disaccharides. And one disaccharide would be lactose, for example. Lactose can behave like a FODMAP if you don't have the ability to break it down. However, if you can break down lactose and you don't have any problem, lactose is not a FODMAP for you because you're digesting it correctly and it doesn't create symptoms. It's not going to create bloating and gas and all these other problems. And avoiding that food would make absolutely no sense whatsoever because it's not a type of FODMAP that you're sensitive to. I've also had many clients that are sensitive to different types of foods and not others. For example, some can handle cruciferous vegetables completely fine. So they can do the Brussels sprouts, they can do the broccoli, they can do cauliflower. They don't have any problems with these foods, even in unlimited quantities. But if they have even a teaspoon of garlic or a teaspoon of onion, huge levels of reactivity. So what's the takeaway going to be here? You have to experiment with these different foods And if you're able to tolerate them, you absolutely should eat them because FODMAPs have beneficial compounds in that help to increase your overall microbiome diversity. FODMAPs are actually, arguably, good for you. They're really important for feeding the colonic flora and helping to increase that gut diversity, which is what's going to solve this problem in the long run. But it is also really important to be mindful of your limitations, to become aware of what types of things you are sensitive to and avoid those. So if that's similar to the example that I gave, where you're a bit sensitive to the onions and garlic, but you can tolerate the cruciferous vegetables, eat the cruciferous vegetables. If you can eat onions and garlic and you have no problems at all, definitely eat them. But then maybe you react to, let's say, like dried fruit or something like that, then avoid that. Don't avoid things that you don't need to. We want overall as broad dietary diversity as possible. And I know there'll be maybe some people thinking, okay, but I don't actually know what I am sensitive to. Okay, I want to try one of the types of FODMAPs. I want to try onions. What FODMAP is onions high? And it will tell you exactly which one it is. And then you can try that. And then if you respond okay to that and you don't have any problem with it, then go on ChatGPT again and say, I tolerated onions really well, and it's high in this type of FODMAP. What other foods are high in this type of FODMAP? And then go and try all of those as well. And you'll probably be completely fine. So experiment with it, get curious. Don't just live in this restricted state for actually no reason, for no actual benefit to you whatsoever. It's really important to experiment. Now, I've got two final tips and tricks, and I've kind of layered this video. So first, I wanted to entice you with some nice flavors. Then I wanted to give you some really actionable, practical tips to help you manage this situation, this condition. Now, I actually want to help you solve it. I want to help you fix this because it is very, very possible to increase your FODMAP tolerance. As I said at the beginning of the video, I've already increased my FODMAP tolerance so much. I've had clients that have completely reversed all of their FODMAP sensitivity, and they're out now like eating all the crazy foods that you wish you could eat and you still can't. So this is really doable. This is very, very possible. We just have to understand it. So I'm going to help you understand it a little bit more and give you some practical solutions-oriented tips here to finish up the video. So the first is probiotics. And the reason probiotics are so important is you think about what FODMAPs are. They're basically fibers or fiber-like compounds. So the definition of fiber is a compound or a substance that we cannot digest. It resists the digestive system in a human. So all of these compounds that resist our digestion are actually vulnerable to bacterial digestion. And if you think about what probiotics are, they're beneficial bacteria. So the common thing that I see in people that have FODMAP sensitivity is they're missing the right bacteria to break those compounds down. And a probiotic is a really easy way to just begin to sort of throw some of these beneficial microbes back in the gut that break these compounds down for us. And it's very common for me to hear someone say, oh yeah, I was fine. I had an iron gut. I could eat everything. And then I got food poisoning and then I became FODMAP sensitive. Or I took a course of antibiotics and I got FODMAP sensitive. And this is because these things really damage that very careful, intricate balance of microflora inside our digestive system. And if this careful balance of microbes is exactly what we use to break down these FODMAP compounds in foods, and then we lose them, we also lose tolerance to those associated foods. So putting those beneficial microbes back in is really, really important. If you are very sensitive, my recommendation for an actual product would be the delactate-free probiotics from Custom Probiotics. They are histamine safe, they're delactate free, they're very well tolerated by people that have sensitivities. I know a lot of people have had bad experiences with probiotics, especially if they're FODMAP sensitive. And usually this is because the probiotic has FODMAPs in it. Like they'll add prebiotics like inulin or galacto-oligosaccharides, which are compounds that if you're FODMAP sensitive, you definitely want to avoid at first. So this probiotic that I'm recommending doesn't have any prebiotics at all. It tends to be extremely well tolerated, even by highly sensitive individuals. And we just want to start on a really, really low dose and build this up very, very gently. I actually have a full step-by-step probiotic introduction guide that I will stick up on the screen somewhere here, and I'll leave a link to in the description. But don't go and watch it just yet because I want to give you this last tip, because it's also really important to help you recover from FODMAP sensitivity. So there's one other product that tends to be extremely well tolerated by people that are sensitive to FODMAPs, and this is a broad spectrum digestive enzyme. So digestive enzymes are really amazing because they are basically a supplement that contains all of the things that you need to facilitate digestion in a pill. Now, I know that sounds too good to be true, but this is one of those very rare cases where this actually is an amazing game changer. This was one of the supplements that made the most difference for me in my healing journey. I have used digestive enzymes with probably 500, 600, 700 people, and they have the highest track record of significant tangible improvements in a relatively short period of time. Now, I'm not saying they are like a miracle pill and they fix everything, but it is really important if we want to correct any type of gut dysbiosis, any type of food sensitivity. We're looking at FODMAPs specifically here, but this is true of any gut problem, any food sensitivity. It is essential that we figure out why your digestive system is not digesting food properly and correct it. We provide it the appropriate support. And the broad spectrum digestive enzyme does an amazing job of covering so many bases with proteins, with fats, with carbohydrates, with starches, and with a lot of these FODMAP fibers as well. So this could be a really nice place to start, but everyone is different. So if you want to just give it a shot, give it a shot. If you're not sure, I have another suggestion for you. So this would be to fill out my gut health quiz. This is a completely free quiz that I created. You can fill it out in about 5 minutes. It's really simple. It's just a bunch of yes or no questions. So it's basically like, do you experience constipation? And then you just pick yes or no. Do you experience bloating or gas? And then you pick yes or no. And it basically uses this to help you understand your symptoms. And as you answer through all of these questions, the algorithm basically builds a customized protocol for you. So it will recommend specific supplements that it thinks will be the most optimal for you given your symptom presentation. And if you do decide to go fill out that quiz and you were thinking about trying the digestive enzymes, I'll be really interested. Take a look at your report, come back to the video and say, did it recommend digestive enzymes? Because there's a really good likelihood that it will. Because if you click this video and you have FODMAP sensitivity, that is indicating a certain level of dysfunction. This is a symptom, and symptoms are clues. And we're basically like detectives trying to figure out your health situation. And this is basically how the quiz works. It's basically playing detective. So it's just listening to all of the different symptoms that you have, and it's using that as really useful information to try to help figure out this mystery. So you've got 3 things to consider trying from the end of this video. You can go take a look at that probiotic video so you can figure out how to get started. Again, I'll stick it up on the screen somewhere here, and it's in the description below. You can take a look at buying a digestive enzyme. The product I would recommend trying to start with is something called Digest Gold by Enzymedica. Again, I'll put a little picture out here for you so you can see it. It's a broad spectrum digestive enzyme, does everything that you need it to do. It's basically like your insurance policy to make sure that you are digesting your food correctly. And finally, you can check out my gut health quiz. So again, completely free quiz that I made will ask you a bunch of questions and generate you a personalized custom report to help you figure out what modalities, what supplements are going to be most helpful based on the symptoms that you're currently experiencing. So that's everything for me today. I hope it's been really, really helpful. Let me know if you learned anything in the comments below. And if you have any questions, also let me know. I'll be really happy to answer those questions for you. So that's everything from me. You take care, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.